it's made every match so much more enjoyable to watch because you don't get the stinkers, right?
Right. It goes back to these guys being smart. They figured out that if I've got the hammer in my back pocket and I don't relinquish it, we can just play them straight up and win. They figured that out. So it's like, all right, now credit to the people at TGL. Like, no, we need to fix this because the hammer can change the match. And since we fixed it, you're not out of it.
The Smiley Show, only on SportsGrid.
There is going to be an energy to game time decisions that you will feel night in and night out. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. I want this to be the place that people come to. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than game time decisions. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
Off of the combine this weekend, there's been lots of anonymous sources and position coaches and all these things that sat down in interviews with him. A lot of teams allegedly don't see him as a first-round pick.
Their big mouth that thinks they can do it either. They're embarrassing themselves. They all think they're so smart, everybody in this business. You're all a bunch of drips. Honestly, you don't know who's going anywhere.
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.
The bracket is out, the matchups are set, and now the madness truly begins. Hello and welcome to SportsGrid's Bracket Central Selection Show, live right here on this Sunday night on SportsGrid. He is the coach. That is James Young, JY. I am Ben Stevens. Over the next 3 hours up until 10 p.m. Eastern Time, the coach and myself will try to make sense of all of the madness, the Cinderella stories, and the upsets that you need to know, and paint the path toward a national championship. Because, JY, as the men's NCAA Tournament in the round of 64 begins on Thursday, exactly 22 days from tonight. 3 weeks in a day from right now, a national champion will be crowned in San Antonio as one lucky team will reach the pinnacle of college hoops and cut down the nets as a national title winner.
It's the best time of year. This is go big or go home. Play your best basketball. 40 minutes every game. It doesn't matter who you are. It doesn't matter who you play. It's about for 40 minutes or 45 or 50 or however long it takes, are you going to be the better team? And I think what's great about this tournament is with the way some of these teams have faltered down the stretch. Some teams playing great. This is going to be, folks, March Madness, I guess, as I think this is a wide open tournament, and I've always talked about it. Styles make fights, Ben, and there are going to be a lot of good fights in this tournament.
In JY, 30-plus games for these teams in a regular season, a conference tournament and championship week to boot as well. But really it comes down to being your best for 6 nights in the month of March and hopefully early in April as you get to San Antonio for a Final Four. Over these next 3 hours, here is the game plan. We will go region by region around the field of 68 for the 86th ever men's NCAA tournament. Who was on the one line? Who had their bubble burst? Who was snubbed from the NCAA tournament? And, of course, those compelling round of 64 matchups. Where will the upsets be? And who could make a Cinderella run and live in history for college hoops for the eternity of this sport? So, JY, let's start with the bracket overall. Our 4-1 seeds entering the big dance. The number 1 overall seed out of the South region, that is Auburn. Despite going down to the SEC tournament over this weekend in Nashville and Duke winning the ACC tournament title with a regular season championship to boot, the Blue Devils still the number 2 overall 1 seed in the Big Dance. Auburn, that number 1 overall seed. As we start with the top, any issue from the coach about the Tigers taking that number 1 overall seed spot?
I do, because if you look at, they want to go by the net. I think their net slid to 4. If you look at the fact of losing 3 in the last 4 games. Listen, I understand you're going to say a team gets a slip up, but you get 3 slip ups in a 10-day period against a Duke team that's played really well and has gone and run roughshod, including losing Cooper Flag. I know they were a little shaky in the first half against Georgia Tech, but they were the best team in the ACC. Could you make an argument about Florida? Florida's maybe the hottest team and the best team playing right now, how they ran through the best league in the country. What about Houston? So to me, I have a question of where are we going? It seems like to me, and we'll get into more of this, was it quad 1 wins? Was it net? Was it how you played down the stretch? It seems like to me this committee picked and chose what they did.
16 quad 1 wins for Auburn, only 9 for Duke. The entire body of the resume starting in early November all the way until this month of March. To JY's point, Florida, the final team on that one line out of the West region. The Gators, the champions of the SEC tournament, crowned a champion today in Nashville, Tennessee, taking that final 1 spot over the Volunteers. Houston is the other team on the 1 line. We will make sense of all of that because, JY, it is a month of madness here in March, but the cream does rise to the top as we get closer and closer to a Final Four in San Antonio. So as you fill out your brackets, make sure you keep an eye on that 1 line. Entering the men's NCAA tournament, Duke will be your national championship favorites at a plus 320 price. To your point about Todd Golden's Gators, second best number now, plus 420. Auburn, third best price, 5-1 after dropping 3, JY, of their Final 4 games to end out the regular season, of course, and in the SEC tourney.
Yeah, I mean, listen, you look at the way you play, and see, I look at this as a coach, right, Ben? Like, how are you looking down the stretch? I throw out the first 30 or so games, because now it's go time. And it seemed like to me, as the lights got brighter, Auburn got smaller. And they looked tight. They looked like they couldn't get things done. And to me, yeah, I mean, listen, there's some losses that are questionable. Todd Golden's been fantastic. And I think what you look at with them is, honestly, their ability to defend. That was always a question about the SEC last year. They scored too many points. But Todd Golden's team, they can defend. I like the way Walter Clayton Jr. has taken that next step on the other side of the ball. But, Ben, they're big, they're athletic, they crash the boards, and they're so intriguing because I think they can run it up the floor. I think Florida can also beat you in a half-court game and pound the glass.
JY, to the other side of the bracket, of course, a conversation always as we near Selection Sunday. That is the bubble. Who were the last 4 teams in? Who was the first team out? Who had their bubble burst on this Sunday evening? And JY, the last team in to the NCAA tournament, caught some by surprise. Despite only one quad 1 victory, North Carolina into the big dance. Earlier on this Sunday, a plus 188 price for UNC to see the men's NCAA tournament. Our last 4 teams into the big dance in order. Texas out of the SEC, Xavier out of the Big East, San Diego State earning the at-large bid from the Mountain West. And JY, that last team in the field of 68, the North Carolina Tar Heels.
Well, I wish I would have known that the head of the committee was the UNC athletic director, because I would.
Now, just to say, that will be a joke that you see proliferated. Bubba Cunningham is the head of the selection committee. As they shared, he excuses himself from the room in any conversation and discussion around the Tar Heels. Fair enough.
Yes, and I think the thing is that they, like, this is the whole thing we're going to talk about. You put them in because of the net, right? But the net doesn't help Gonzaga or other teams, right? So that's where it's questionable. To me, if I'm looking at a team, I'm going to Mount West. I'm looking at Boise State, a team that was 50 with the Ken Pond, 43 with the net. They went and tried to schedule aggressively. They have a win over St. Mary's. They have a win over Clemson. I thought Boise State deserved that last spot, and maybe they're not the sexy name, but but I thought, Ben, that was the team that should have got that last spot.
JY, I think the argument for Carolina is the non-conference strength of schedule. Fifth hardest non-con strength of schedule for the Tar Heels around the nation this year in college hoops. The team I thought was snubbed out of the Big Ten Conference, that would be Indiana. 4 quad 1 wins, not a single defeat, quads 2 through 4. Double the amount of quad 1 wins for IU as Xavier and North Carolina combined, 2 between the Heels and the Musketeers. Of course, that will be a huge conversation. Who was snubbed, who was left out of the big dance. But as we'll break down as we unveil the bracket here over these next 3 hours on SportsGrid's Bracket Central Selection Show. Also, JY, the differing positions on a seed line, some of those seed discrepancies, and of course, as every great college basketball head coach will tell you, it doesn't really matter what your resume says. If you got into the big dance, it's now all dictated by matchup, and those seed line matchups are going to be something to pay attention to throughout the entirety of this show.
Yeah, it's going to be important because style make fights, and there are some intriguing teams at the 7, at the 8, at the 9, even deeper than that could make a run.
We're going to talk about the 1 line, your 4 number 1 seeds in the 2025 men's NCAA Tournament. The number 1 overall seed is Auburn out of the SEC. The cream rises to the top, and some national championship numbers next.
It's made every match so much more enjoyable to watch because you don't get the stinkers, right?
Right. It goes back to these guys being smart. They figured out that if I've got the hammer in my back pocket and I don't relinquish it, we can just play them straight up and win. They figured that out. So it's like, all right, now credit to the people at TGL. Like, no, we need to fix this because the hammer can change the match. And since we fixed it, you're not out of it.
The Smiley Show, only on SportsGrid.
There is going to be an energy to game time decisions that you will feel night in and night out. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. I want this to be the place that people come to. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than game time decisions. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
Off of the combine this weekend, there's been lots of anonymous sources and position coaches and all these things that sat down in interviews with him. A lot of teams allegedly don't see him as a first-round pick.
Their big mouth that thinks they can do it either. They're embarrassing themselves. They all think they're so smart, everybody in this business. You're all a bunch of drips. Honestly, you don't know who's going anywhere.
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.
It's made every match so much more enjoyable to watch because you don't get the stinkers, right?
Right. It goes back to these guys being smart. They figured out that if I've got the hammer in my back pocket and I don't relinquish it, we can just play them straight up and win. They figured that out. So it's like, all right, now credit to the people at TGL. Like, no, we need to fix this because the hammer can change the match. And since we fixed it, you're not out of it.
The Smiley Show, only on SportsGrid.
There is going to be an energy to game.
The field of 68 for the 2025 men's NCAA Tournament has now been unveiled as we welcome you back to SportsGrid's Bracket Central Selection Show, live right here on this Sunday night. That's the coach, JY James Young. I am Ben Stevens. JY, as you get a bracket, as it is finally released, as everybody waits for this day at the end of a long regular season that begins in November after many conference tournaments, all 31 around the nation, have taken place. You wait to see that bracket. And there are so many different ways of breaking it down. The teams that were left on the outside looking in, a bubble that was burst, some seed discrepancies, but of course you can also start at the top. The 4 teams on the one line for the 2025 Big Dance. We start with the number 1 overall seed. That would be the Auburn Tigers, the outright regular season champs out of the most difficult conference this year in college basketball. That would be the SEC. So Auburn is that number 1 overall seed, JY, despite dropping both of their final regular season games in the final week of the regular season, and then their second game in the semifinals on a Saturday at the SEC tournament against Tennessee. They have dropped 3 of their last 4, but the entire body of work, the stellar resume for Bruce Pearl and his Tigers, still good enough to get rewarded that number 1 overall seed for the NCAA tournament.
Well, you said it best. It was the body of work. It was the entire season, not just the blimp of the last 4 games, losing 3 of the last 4. And what you like about Bruce Pearl's team, the fact he can go deep. 10-man rotation. You have the fact that his experience. I mean, do you know that Mazzara is older than Zion Williamson?
I did.
25 years old. So you got men, grown men. So to me, obviously, looking at the quad 1 wins and the fact that how they were wire to wire, yes, it makes sense. What you have to hope for if you're Bruce Pearl is we got the junk out of our system. We got the poor play out of our system. We got knocked out early in the SEC tournament. We're go home. They probably practice today. They know who they're playing. Yeah. Scouts are going on tonight, probably off tomorrow, and then they start to get themselves ready and hope that the bad stretch, Ben, is behind them.
And Auburn does have a player in consideration for the Wooden Award, the National Player of the Year in Janai Broome, a guy that can do everything for this Tigers team. JY, often when you are trying to play your best basketball at the most significant stages of a season in a tournament known for its madness, entering on a cold streak is not the best, dropping 3 of your last 4. But every NCAA tournament national champ since 1985, when the field expanded to 64 teams, has at least reached the semifinal round of their conference tournament. Despite only needing 1 victory to get to the semifinal round, that does qualify for Auburn. They are the number 1 overall seed in the Big Dance. They are atop the South region. We will go region by region, each portion of the bracket throughout this opening hour, and we will start with the South in just a little bit. Keep an eye on who the 2 seed is. That would be the outright Big Ten regular season champs in Michigan State. Some seed discrepancies in the South region we will break down in just a couple of moments as well. But the number 2 overall seed also on that one line in the East region, it's the Duke Blue Devils. As of this Sunday, JY, Auburn closed as a minus 550 favorite to be the number 1 overall seed. But there was some thought, even without Cooper Flagg this week in Charlotte, winning a tournament title in the ACC on a Saturday evening against Louisville, that Duke could be in the running for that number 1 overall seed. Ultimately, still on the one line, the top team in the East region.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm not going to lie, I was shocked. I actually thought that the way that Duke had played, minus the way that Auburn had played, lent itself for Duke to be the overall number 1 seed. And I think it wouldn't have mattered because even though the overall number 1 seed gets to pick the region, you know that Duke would have went east and not south because they don't want to go play in Atlanta and be matched up with an SEC team as the 2 seed. So to me, I was a little shocked at that. But for Duke and John Shire, it's simply this. What do we get out of Cooper Flagg? Are we playing him in the round of 64? If we are, how many minutes? But don't also sleep on the fact that Malik Brown, another key defensive guy, lockdown defender. And that's the thing that I was so impressed with, Ben, this team this season, is they defensively get after you. When a team that starts 3 freshmen, your number 1 concern when kids come to college, honestly, is can you defend at the Division I level? And this team, by the way, I know they got passed by St. John's at the end, but they are dynamite defensively. And to me, I'll say this so I'm blue in the face. When your best player, who's going to win the Wooden Award and a number 1 draft pick, is your best defender, I'll coach Cooper Flagg any day of the week.
Duke right now, although they are not the number one overall seed, does enter the big dance as the national title favorites. A plus 340 price on John Shire and his Blue Devils, and it should be shared, JY. Since the field expanded in 1985, 25 of our 39 national champs have been a 1 seed, including 4 of the last 5. A tournament known for its madness, but at the end, in a Final Four contending for a national championship, it is often those number 1 seeds that are there at the end of the day. The other 2 number 1 seeds that we have yet to discuss in the Midwest region, it is Houston, the champions of the Big 12 for a second consecutive year. Both years the Cougs have been in this conference. Kelvin Sampson has led them to the top of the Big 12. And, of course, the 1 seed out west, that would be the Florida Gators, who ran the gauntlet this week in Nashville as an SEC tournament title winner. JY, of those 2 teams, whose makeup do you like the most to make a deeper run here in the month of March?
To me, it's Houston. You know, to me, when you look at the Houston Cougars, it's almost like they're in the Big 12 and they're kind of being like left out a little bit of what people think about this team. But when you have LJ Cryer, who's on the transfer from Oklahoma, has been really good. Now, we got to see what we get out of Joel Roberts, who missed the championship game. He should be back. But to me, Emmanuel Sharp, during the Big 12 tournament, showed his mettle. If he could be that next scorer, consistent scorer, you never worry about Calvin Sampson's team on defense. Can they score enough? And with Emmanuel Sharp, they could do that.
Houston winning both the tournament title and the regular season crown. A 19-1 regular season record in the Big 12. The Cougs, the top team in the Midwest region, they take on SIU Edwardsville out of the Ohio Valley. The 1 seed out in the West region, that is Florida. They will take on the champions from the MEAC, in Norfolk State. And then, of course, JY, our top 2 seeds. Duke and Auburn await the winners of a couple of play-in tournament games early in the week, Tuesday and Wednesday night in Dayton, Ohio. Speaking of those play-in games that we have in the bubble, we break it down next.
The game is on. The stakes are high. But the action isn't just on the field.
He's rearranging that ring. Get it inside!
SportsGrid's in-game live. Your ultimate second screen experience.
Just a little flyer, couple of 18.5-point live line.
Every prop, every play, every day.
Anything can happen. That's complete chaos.
It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
Anyone that's been to a sporting event, the atmosphere before a game, I think Game Time Decisions has that same exact atmosphere. This is our arena. This is what we do. There is going to be an energy to Game Time Decisions that you will feel night in and night out. The excitement you get when you lock your bets in, when you're figuring out what you want to do, we can zone in on the biggest games each night. I want this to be the place that people come to before the games start so they feel as ready as possible to lock in their cards. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions to get that new information, react to it, and be able to then bet accordingly. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
The 2 guys that can do it all.
Too much electricity this morning.
This is a good time. We're having a lot of fun.
I had to do a triple take. Ka-ching! Why? Because of parity. I didn't mean to offend.
Yeah, it's not going to happen.
Load management is a dirty word.
Let him rip.
You know what? Circumstances provide the results. What? How do you do this once? Oh, Donnie, you got such a good show there.
A network that is booming.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
Welcome back to SportsGrid's Bracket Central Selection Show. He is the coach, James Young, JY. I am Ben Stevens. So many different categories to break down. Anytime a bracket is unveiled, we talk about the one line. But of course, JY, as everybody examines in the final few weeks of a regular season, certainly through conference tourney week as well, it is the bubble. Who is going to have it burst? Who is going to be one of the favorable four to be inside the NCAA tournament? Who was left on the outside looking in? Our last four teams in to the 2025 men's NCAA tournament in order: Texas, Xavier, San Diego State in North Carolina. JYUNC, the last team in to the 2025 Big Dance. Of those four teams that will play in Dayton, Ohio just a little bit later this week, the last four teams into the Big Dance that had that bubble elevated. Who surprised you the most that they made it to the NCAA tourney?
It's Carolina. It's Carolina with their lack of quad one wins, and the fact that, and here's the reason why. I understand that Carolina's net is great, or better than some. Yeah. I understand that Carolina played better down the stretch, but to me, to be the way they played the second half in their regular season finale, right, against Duke.
Yeah.
Which, okay, they get another chance. Then you have Cooper Flag out, and you're down 24 points in the first half. That to me looked like a team that did not deserve a chance to be in. Now, but then you're going to say, well, we went with the net. We went with the net. You got to make up your minds on what you're doing, right? Is it the net?
Yeah.
Is it the quad? Is it how you're playing? Whatever. Ben's going to talk about Indiana. Boise State. I like Boise State. I thought this team, when you look at these teams that go outside of their non-power and they go play power teams, they went and played and beat Clemson, the second best team or third best team in the ACC. They went and beat St. Mary's, who's a regular season winner at the WCC. You can't control who they go play.
Yeah.
So how are we going to sit there and say Carolina deserves to get in because of the net? But the way they played, and they had so many opportunities more than a team like Boise. I still think Boise State should have got that bid.
And it was a tough one for the Broncos, JY, entering the Mountain West Conference Tournament, trying to hold off the team that is as hot as you will see in college basketball right now in Colorado State, who ended up winning the conference tournament and, of course, earning that automatic berth to the Big Dance. North Carolina, perhaps the most surprising, if you are questioning why the Tar Heels were the last team into the NCAA tournament. The selection committee has always highlighted, what have you done for me in non-conference action? And to UNC's credit, under Hubert Davis, they had the fifth most difficult nationally strength of schedule in non-conference play. Indiana left out, as was Ohio State, Boise State, and West Virginia. And JY, there will be many in Morgantown who had a great first year under Darian DeVries as the head coach there of the Mountaineers that are questioning why they were left out of the Big Dance. Not a great time during conference tournament week in Big 12 action, but neutral court victories for WVU over Arizona and Gonzaga, a road win in the Fog against a Kansas team that did struggle but still a tournament team, and a win over Iowa State with 0 losses in quad 3 or quad 4 play. West Virginia, the first team on the outside of the bubble looking in, also slightly snubbed.
Yeah, obviously so. And I guess what the problem is they lost to Colorado in the first round of the Big 12 tournament. But if you their tournament, but when you think of Colorado, right? Ted Boyle's team is much better than the last place team. They took the next round. They took Houston within 10 points. Yeah. So to me, that takes a look at it. And I think that's where it is how do you evaluate and how do you look at these teams and what they do? I think that's another team that deserves so. I mean, I don't know if Xavier deserved to be in the tournament. I don't think that was a terribly strong Big East season. We look at how they're seeded behind St. John. So it's very interesting to see, and there's a lot of questions that one day we'll get answers to, but at least the two of us, there's some questionable teams that got in this tournament.
Questionable teams that reached the Big Dance, questionable seed lines as well. We'll start with the South region in our bracket by bracket, portion by portion breakdown. On the other side of the break, It's where the number 1 overall seed Auburn is. But at the top half of that bracket with the Tigers, they were not given any favors for a favorable path to a Final Four in San Antonio. So first 4 action this week in Dayton, North Carolina, and San Diego State on Tuesday evening. The Heels, a 3.5-point favorite against SDSU. Of course, the Aztecs under Brian Dutcher just a few years ago, a Final Four team, a national runner-up. And then on Wednesday night, it is Xavier taking on Texas. The Musketeers booked as an early 2.5-point favorite. The South region we go, and the number 1 overall seed in Auburn. Next.
The game is on. The stakes are high. But the action isn't just on the field.
He's rearranging that roof. Get it inside!
SportsGrid's in-game live. Your ultimate second screen experience.
A little flyer, couple of 18.5-point live line.
Every prop, every play, every day.
Anything can happen. That's complete chaos.
It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
Anyone that's been to a sporting event, the atmosphere before a game, I think Game Time Decisions has that same exact atmosphere. This is our arena. This is what we do. There is going to be an energy to Game Time Decisions that you will feel night in and night out. The excitement you get when you lock your bets in, when you're figuring out what you want to do, we can zone in on the biggest games each night. I want this to be the place that people come to before the games start so they feel as ready as possible to lock in their cards. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions to get that new information, react to it, and be able to then bet accordingly. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
The 2 guys that can do it all.
Too much electricity this morning.
This is a good time. We're having a lot of fun.
I had to do a triple take. Ka-ching! Why? Because of parity. I didn't mean to offend.
Yeah, it's not going to happen.
Load management is a dirty word.
Let him rip.
You know what? Circumstances provide the results. What? How do you do this one? Oh, Donnie, you've got such a good show there.
A network that is booming.
The early line, only on SportsGrid.
We welcome you back to SportsGrid's Bracket Central Selection Show, live right here on this Sunday. 22 days from right now, a national champion will be crowned inside the Alamo Dome in San Antonio. In the team that we thought for most of this college basketball campaign would have the best shot, the number 1 overall seed in the 2025 men's NCAA Tournament in the South region, it is Auburn. JY, over these next 2.5 hours now, here on this SportsGrid Selection Show, we will go bracket by bracket, portion by portion, region by region, and dive deep. In our next segment, we'll give you some games to watch, some opening round of 64 upset potentials, and some star players that could become household names over this 3-week run. Let's start with Auburn, the number 1 overall seed. They await the winner of a play-in game in Dayton later this week. That will be Alabama State, the champions out of the SWAC. In St. Francis, Pennsylvania, the Red Flash into the NCAA Tournament for the first time since the early 90s, the champions of the Northeast Conference. When you look at Auburn's portion of the South region, JY, that top half of this bracket, what do you make of the path for Bruce Pearl's Tigers?
I don't think they gave him any favors in the second round. I think you look at a team that's struggling right now mightily, losers of 3 of the last 4 games. Mm-hmm. And that second round matchup, I'm already eyeing up with Louisville and Creighton. You got to look at this, folks. Coach Kelsey did a great job first year coming over from college at Charleston to Louisville, really with that team and establishing a culture. But then you look at the other side. with Greg McDermott, with the 4-time defending Defensive Player of the Year in Ryan Kalkbrenner.
Yep.
A 7-1 big who can protect the rim and could possibly give Janai Broome fits when Janai is around the basket. And you got to look at a guy like Ashworth as a scoring point guard. I think that is an intriguing 1-8 or 1-9 matchup, I would say, if Creighton were to get by Louisville. When you look down the next two matchups, you see San Diego, people are going to talk about this could be one of the upset picks that people are going to look at as a possible win because of the fact that Michigan can be a little flighty. I mean, They were flighty today just getting that win in the Big Ten tournament. And then you have James Jones, Yale, Danny Wolf goes to Michigan. Could we see Yale beat Texas A&M and Coach Jones go against his former best player in the second round? Yale is a live play as the 13 seed.
Last year as a 13 seed against a 4 seed out of the South region, that being the Auburn Tigers then, Yale pulled off the upset. Danny Wolf might be in Ann Arbor with the Big Ten tourney champs in the Michigan Wolverines, but John Poulikitis still there for the Yale Bulldogs in a couple of great performers who have won the Ivy League. James Jones, maybe one of the most undervalued coaches around the country in college basketball, 4 NCAA tourney trips for the Bulldogs in the last 6 years. JY, we talk about teams that were left on the outside of the bubble, teams that did not reach the NCAA tournament. And of course, those are the teams we always consider being snubbed. But it's also the seed lines that always perplex a few. Where did the committee slot you in terms of your position in the NCAA tournament field of 68? And one that scratched many a head right from the very start was the 8th seed in the South region, Louisville, the runner-ups in the ACC, as you alluded to in that tournament title game, losing to Duke on a Saturday night. A very compelling 8-9 matchup between the Cards and the Blue Jays, who also finished runner-up in their conference tournament this week, of course, the St. John's of the Big East.
And you look at it, just go to KenPom. This is a team that's rated 23rd in the KenPom ratings, right? A team that's really good defensively. 21st in adjusted efficiency, pretty good offensively as well. Looks like in the top 50. So this is a team 29th. So this is a team in Louisville that can beat you on both sides of the ball, offensively and defensively. Shoot the ball well from 3. Don't turn the ball over a lot. Great offensive rebounding percentage. So the ability to go get another shot. I really don't think that they really gave. I don't think they gave Auburn any favors here. I mean, you could literally look at this and we'll go through it like.
Yeah.
Could Auburn be the first 1 seed to get knocked out? There's a distinct possibility of this because of the fact that I think both Louisville and Creighton, for their style of play, how they defend, and their coaching, can each take out Auburn, a team that's not playing good basketball right now.
2.5-point spread in favor of Louisville in that opening round 64 matchup against Creighton. When you were snubbed slightly on the seed line, at least you got a favor of where your pod is to begin the big dance. Louisville's opening round matchup and maybe round of 32 game against the Tigers in Lexington, Kentucky. That's the Cats portion of the Bluegrass State, but of course there will be a large Louisville crowd in attendance. How about UC San Diego against the champions of the Big Ten tourney in Indianapolis in Michigan? 5 years as a D1 program for the Tritons from La Jolla, California. And JY, in their first year eligible for the big dance, Eric Olin has led UC San Diego into the NCAA tournament. But not just a mid-major, champions of the Big West, ranked 35th in the net, 39th in KenPom, entering this selection Sunday in only a 2.5-point spread in favor of the Maize and Blue for that round of 64 opener.
And a team that is 30-4 that went and played at San Diego State, a tough place to play to open the season and lose by 5. They go play James Madison, or a team that's pretty good in boardwalk battle and win by 6. So they went and they played the teams. They beat a Utah State at Utah State. Really tough place to play. So this team is locked and loaded, and this is what this is where you start to have fun.
Yeah.
Right? Because the household names that you don't know about, that you're going to start to hear their names over and over again. This is a team, as a 13, that could definitely make a run.
Like the Big West Player of the Year from down under, but not in Australia, a Kiwi. Oh, man, I had it. Aniwa Tate Jones. There it is. We're working on our pronunciations.
Say it nice.
Aniwa Aniwa, Tate Jones. We'll talk more about UC San Diego's best player for their Big Dance outlook in just a moment. The favorites, of course, to win the South region, that would be Auburn. You can consider it a Final Four price at plus 105. But let's get to the bottom half of this bracket, of the portion in the South region. And, of course, the 2 seed, that would be the Michigan State Spartans into the Big Dance for a 27th consecutive year, led by the living legend in Tom Izzo. The 11th Big Ten regular season crown for Sparty this year. Tom Izzo, of course, matching some of the greats in this conference for the most ever in terms of Big Ten titles and the most ever Big Ten wins in men's basketball history as well. MSU, the 2 seed. Iowa State out of the Big 12 when healthy, JY, a dangerous team. They are the 3 seed in the South region.
And that's the key thing, health. They've dealt with injuries all year. And an Iowa State team that can beat you offensively and defensively. One of the teams, top 20 in adjusted efficiency, offensively and defensively, according to KenPom. They can shoot the ball well. They have dynamic scores. It's been about health. Let's be honest, man. If this team is healthy, to me, this is a team that's capable of going on a Final Four run versus Sparty. And what can you say? As a coach, I continue to show appreciation for what Tom Izzo has done. We keep losing these great coaches left and right. Be thankful that we still got the Izzo and it's March. Can Sparty make a run again? Probably. But I'll tell you right now, Iowa State, if they're healthy, that looks like a team to me that can get to the Elite Eight.
And we will see if they are healthy. The Cyclones guard and Keyshawn Gilbert will be a game-time decision for the NCAA Tournament. They need their point guard, the Ames native, in Taman Lipsey, back as well. Michigan State trying to get back to the Final Four for the first time since 2019. Tom Izzo, 8 Final Four appearances, the most for a Big Ten men's basketball head coach in the history of that conference. The winner of the first 4 game in Dayton will be the 11th seed in the South region, San Diego State and UNC. They will take on an Ole Miss team, the Runnin' Rebs, into the Big Dance for the first time since 2019. And a very compelling Marquette and New Mexico showdown. The 7-10 split in the opening round of 64 matchup between the Golden Eagles, a very veteran starting 5 for Shaka Smart and Marquette, and the champions out of the Mountain West, led by Richard Pitino and New Mexico. We dive even deeper into the South region next.
The game is on. The stakes are high. But the action isn't just on the field.
He's rearranging that rim. Get it inside!
SportsGrid's in-game live. Your ultimate second screen experience.
A little flyer, couple of 15.5-point live line.
Every prop, every play, every day.
Anything can happen. That's complete chaos.
It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
Anyone that's been to a sporting event, the atmosphere before a game, I think Game Time Decisions has that same exact atmosphere. This is our arena. This is what we do. There is going to be an energy to Game Time Decisions that you will feel night in and night out. The excitement you get when you lock your bets in, when you're figuring out what you want to do, we can zone in on the biggest games each night. I want this to be the place that people come to before the games start so they feel as ready as possible to lock in their cards. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions to get that new information, react to it, and be able to then bet accordingly. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
The 2 guys that can do it all.
Too much electricity this morning.
This is a good time. We're having a lot of fun.
I had to do a triple take. Ka-ching! Why? Because of parity. I didn't mean to offend.
Yeah, it's not going to happen.
Load management is a dirty word.
Let him rip.
You know what? circumstances provide the results. What? How do you do this one? Oh, Donnie, you got such a good show there.
A network that is booming.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
We still have more than 2 hours together here on SportsGrid's Bracket Central Selection Show. So as we go piece by piece through the field of 68, portion by portion throughout the Big Dance bracket, of course, we take deep dives. Games to know, upsets to watch, and players that could become household names in just the next few days or weeks throughout the 2025 Men's NCAA Tournament. We start in the South region where the number 1 overall seed in Auburn resides. But, JY, as we go through this portion of the bracket, your game to watch in the opening round of 64 is what? Between which two sides?
Well, I just talked about it in the last segment because I think it's an intriguing matchup, and that's the 8-9 matchup between Louisville and Creighton. You have two teams I think that have the capability of knocking out Auburn. And if you look at style of play, both teams pretty good offensively and defensively. You have great coaches. You have in a game which, listen, Ben said it best, the biggest advantage could be the location of the game. Not a terrible far drive from Louisville to Lexington for the faithful fans of Louisville.
Yeah.
But to me, this is an intriguing matchup because if you are either one of these teams and you're saying, okay, which one seed would I want to play in the second round? It'd be Auburn because of the way they're playing.
Which is crazy to say up until about 2.5 weeks ago. But the Tigers do enter dropping 3 of their final 4, their final 2 games in the regular season, and, of course, their second game in the SEC tournament after barely escaping past Ole Miss on quarterfinal Friday in Nashville. I would agree, a 2.5-point spread, as you saw there, in favor of Louisville and Pat Kelsey. And if we can just take a moment to highlight the ACC Coach of the Year, his first year with the Cards after a great turnaround at Charleston. Pat Kelsey, JY, took over a team that was a dumpster fire in the Kenny Payne era.
Terrible.
Louisville had 8 wins, only 8 wins a season ago. They now have 27. That is the second best year-over-year improvement in turnaround at the high major level in D1 college basketball since 1950. A 19-win improvement season to season for Louisville, led by a couple of great transfers in the backcourt, Terrence Edwards from James Madison and Chucky Hepburn, the ACC Defensive Player of the Year from Wisconsin. How could you not? Against his hometown team. He's a native of Bellevue, Nebraska, not far outside of Omaha. My opening round of 64 matchup to pay attention to in the South region, bottom portion of the bracket, JY, that would be Marquette and New Mexico. Very intrigued by this Golden Eagles team led by Shaka Smart. They are a team that relies on their starting 5. Cam Jones, Stevie Mitchell, Ben Gold, a lot of experience for this Marquette team, but did not play their best basketball down the tail end of this Big East campaign. 3.5-point spread in favor of the Golden Eagles. You've heard of Rick Pitino. His son, Richard, not too shabby either. The Mountain West Coach of the Year with the Mountain West Player of the Year in Donovan Dent, one of the best point guards in the country for the Lobos. And JY, what wins in March? Veteran guard play, matched with a good big man for New Mexico. That is Nelly Jr. Joseph. I think the Lobos are a very intriguing team that could make some noise at the bottom portion of the South region.
Yeah, they are. And I think, by the way, shout out to the Bertino family. First father-son duo to win Coach of the Year in the same year. So shout out to them.
If only you had a boy.
If only I had a boy.
Who knows what could have been.
Maybe Maddie or Juliana.
That's also
good.
come on. First father-daughter combo. Anyway, yeah.
They're dancers, but we'll talk about that another day. But to me, yes, New Mexico is an intriguing team. They've shown a propensity to play really good basketball, and it's an intriguing matchup that they have in the first round versus a Marquette team that's got experience but hasn't played good basketball in a while. This isn't an Auburn thing, which is this is going on a better pass in the last month.
Yeah.
Now, they've had some tricky spots. The loss at St. John's at the buzzer with the poke by Kadari to Wiltshire to export the buzzer. But they're not playing well. So, to me, that guy over there, Cam Jones, has got to bring it and be the best player on the floor. But New Mexico is a very much a live play.
A very talented team that plays at a very fast tempo, fifth fastest around the country. Keep an eye on New Mexico. But JY, as we know, round of 64 in a tournament known for its madness, we are always looking for upsets. That means an underdog winning outright. An upset, by the way, just so we have the verbiage down here on the SportsGrid network, is considered when a team 5 seed lines lower than their opponent wins outright. So, your opening round of 64 upset that you think we will see in the South region is where?
Weren't they a 13 seed last year?
They were.
In the same region?
At least against the 4 seed out of the SEC,
right?
I can confirm.
So I'm going with Yale. I'm going with the Bulldogs. Coach Jones, one of the best coaches in America, done a great job. Think about this, folks. For a long time, a long time, the Ivy League was run by Princeton, right? And then Penn for a little bit when Steve Donahue was there. What he has done at Yale and losing Danny Wolf and bringing him back, I think that is the upset to look at. I look at Yale to knock off A&M.
And I'm going to agree with you. Not just JY, this very talented and veteran Yale team that was in large part outside of Danny Wolf here a year ago when they upset a 4 seed from the Southeastern Conference in Auburn, but because of some history in the Big Dance. In 10 of our last 14 NCAA tournaments, we have seen at least one number 13 seed pull off an opening round upset in the round of 64. James Jones has his Yale team dancing for a 4th time in the last 6 college basketball campaigns. A player to watch that could become a household name, JY, in the next few days in the South region is who?
Well, you probably know him already because he's the biggest one in that field, and that's Ryan Kalkbrenner, the 7'1" center out of Creighton, 4-time Defensive Player of the Year, can impact the game inside out. To me, it's about how aggressive Ryan Kalkbrenner is. If Ryan Kalkbrenner is aggressive, they knock off the 8th seed in Louisville, and then he is the matchup nightmare that Janai Broome does not want to see.
Only 2 players in the history of Big East men's basketball have won 4 consecutive DPOYs, Defensive Players of the Year, Patrick Ewing and Creighton's Ryan Kalkbrenner. I promised I would get the pronunciation right. Aniwa Tate Jones, the big Kiwi for UC San Diego, my player to watch. He could cause a lot of havoc for the 2 bigs for Michigan and Danny Wolf and Vlad Golden, the Big West Player of the Year with the hottest team currently in college basketball. The Tritons from La Jolla have won 15 consecutive games, entering the madness of March. More on SportsGrid up next.
The game is on. The stakes are high. But the action isn't just on the field.
He's rearranging that roof. Get it inside!
SportsGrid's in-game live. Your ultimate second screen experience.
Just a little flyer, couple of 15.5-point live line.
Every prop, every play, every day.
Anything can happen. That's complete chaos.
It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
Anyone that's been to a sporting event, the atmosphere before a game, I think Game Time Decisions has that same exact atmosphere. This is our arena. This is what we do. There is going to be an energy to Game Time Decisions that you will feel night in and night out. The excitement you get when you lock your bets in, when you're figuring out what you want to do, we can zone in on the biggest games each night. I want this to be the place that people come to before the games start so they feel as ready as possible to lock in their cards. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions to get that new information, react to it, and be able to then bet accordingly. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
It's two guys that can do it all.
Too much electricity this morning.
This is a good time. We're having a lot of fun.
I had to do a triple take. Ka-ching! Why? Because of parity. I didn't mean to offend.
Yeah, it's not going to happen.
Load management is a dirty word.
Let him rip.
You know what? Circumstances provide the results. What? How do you do this one? Oh, Donnie, you've got such a good show there.
A network that is booming.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
What would the big dance be without madness, without chaos, without a sleeper run through the entirety of the bracket? We will give you a championship sleeper, a team that could make a run to a Final Four, and of course, one that could win a couple of games early on and maybe see the second weekend, otherwise known as the Sweet 16. Now, when we say championship sleeper, we're not looking at the one line or any of the top 10 best prices to win a national title. Maybe a team just a little bit under the radar who might have been on the radar earlier in the year, but maybe not playing their best basketball as of this moment. But March is about momentum, JY. So who do you expect to turn it around and maybe make that deep run here even into early April?
I said it before. It's Iowa State. I mean, to me, it's simply put, if you close your eyes and Iowa State is healthy, are they one of not 6, 7 best teams in the country? Absolutely. A team that's got a rank at Ken Bottom, I do believe, of 10. So to me, they got punished. I wouldn't say got punished, but they got seeded based off of their body of work. But what happens if their body of work doesn't reflect their entire team? We talked about Gilbert Jones. We talked to the rest of the team. If they are healthy, this team is capable of making a serious run and giving teams a lot of problems. My team to watch go make a run for Master Championship, Iowa State.
I have a national championship ticket on Iowa State. You might ask why. It's interesting in a tournament defined by its madness. There are some very long-standing trends, including the Ken Pom numbers in a weird Week 6 AP poll trend that seems that it cannot be beat. For the last 20 years, the national champ at the end of the big dance ranked in the top 12 of the Week 6 AP top 25. 19 of the last 20 in the adjusted offensive efficiency metrics from Kenneth Pomeroy in the top 25. 16 of the last 20 top 25 adjusted defensive efficiency. 5 teams qualify entering the NCAA tournament. Auburn, Duke, Florida, Tennessee, and the other one would be the Iowa State Cyclones. There is also a team that is booked as a 3 seed in the East region, JY, that if they are hot, not as they displayed today in Indianapolis, but if they are hot with one of the most prolific offenses we have ever seen inside the Kohl Center up in Madison, Wisconsin, the Badgers might be able to make some noise as well. At a 40-1 number, Wisconsin to win a national championship could be worth just a sprinkle. I have the Badgers from the middle of February at a 23-1 price to be a Final Four team, led by, in my estimation, the best transfer this year in college basketball in John Tonje. I do believe Wisconsin, with the matchup, where they stand, and if the offense is clicking, can make some noise here in the month of March. And when you look at the East region from EJY, Duke, of course, is the top team in this portion of the bracket. And I think it is a very favorable path to a big dance national championship, to a Final Four appearance for the Blue Devils. But I feel the same way at the bottom of this bracket as well. Wisconsin at a 40-1 number, for me, a team to keep an eye on under Greg Gard.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I put it to you this way. They can't shoot it any worse than they did today. So maybe they got their bad game out of their system versus the Alabama team that, let's be honest, it can be a little bit flighty. So to me, you could look at a team like Wisconsin and being able to get on a run, particularly the way the Greg Gard teams play. And here's the thing, with the way they run their offense, if they get a lead, they're going to milk the clock, get a good possession. Only thing that happened today is they just didn't make shots.
They just did not make shots. Alabama also would like to hoist a ton of shots. That could be a great second weekend matchup with the Crimson Tide, the 2 seed in the East region. JY, for a team that might win a couple of games in the opening weekend and maybe start to make a Cinderella run, you're staying right here in this portion of the bracket with a head coach that knows all about pulling off an upset.
He knows about pulling off upsets because he did it at UMBC, and he's led by the Ukraine train. I just made that up myself. And I think it's Max Shulga. This kid, dynamic, shoots the ball really well. And Ryan Odom does such a great job. Listen, RVA, love him while you can, because he won't be there next year, because he's going to be somewhere else, maybe in Charlottesville, maybe in Philadelphia. But this team, VCU, I think I like them to go beat BYU, and I think that will be a very intriguing matchup. I think VCU could give Wisconsin fifth in the 11-3 game.
BYU was on a hot streak until semifinal Friday in the Big 12 tournament against Houston. They had won 9 in a row. My sleeper, we'll talk about this team a ton throughout this Bracket Central selection show, but the champions of the Missouri Valley, that would be the Drake Bulldogs. Ben McCollum, Bennett Sturtz, know the Bulldogs from Des Moines. Hour number 2 of our selection show on the way next.